Hey friends, welcome to the Tennis and Bagels podcast. I am Andre and this is Vansh. How you doing, man?
Yeah, doing good. I'm just finished Madrid, and there's right on to the next one, Rome, another 2 week event, and then we're just getting ready for Roland Garros, which is actually still like 2.5, 3 weeks away. But yeah, some really interesting stuff to talk about with Madrid.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as we record this is we are a few days past the tournament. So as you're listening to this, obviously it's gonna be almost like midweek Rome, I would say. Like hopefully I can edit this very fast and get it up. But yeah, we're tired. It's yeah, life and whatever. But still, when she's working at Tennis One, he's got a whole lot of eyes, I guess, like on the tennis sports, as he always was always very good at, like just kind of finding his parallels and stats, and now even more so because he gets to do this for a living, which is awesome. But I was able to watch quite a few matches actually on in the Madrid side. I watched some, not all of the Madrid final on Sunday, the men's final. Could not watch on the day of the women's final, but I did rewatch it prior to this video because honestly, if we can just start with this one, honestly, it was for now at least match of the year. Is that what you say? Would you say? Because the
Yeah,
hype on Twitter was incredible. Like I just got home and on the Saturday and I started checking in like what people were saying and seeing the tweets from the match, and everybody was just like amazed about the quality of the match. And I watched it later and we were discussing a little bit earlier, and in my opinion, like it was one of those matches where it came down to just like a couple points, a couple misses here and there. And yeah, it was just unlucky for Sabalenka at the end. Let's say wasting three match points. Swiatek playing incredibly well as well, like very cold and collected in those moments, and just kind of in the end, just throwing herself down on the ground after like 3 hours and 20 minutes of match or something like that. It's crazy.
yeah. I mean, this was such a great showcase for the WTA. Like this final. I mean, you have to say like as of now, like it's definitely the match of the year. I can't come up with you know, a better match as far as this year goes, but just because it had everything, the two best players in the world, Sabalenka, ideal conditions for her. For Swiatek, the only clay big title that she hadn't won yet. And these two played a cracking final last year. So going into this, I was kind of like, I mean, if we get something even like 80% or 70% of what we got from last year's final,
Mm.
that's already a huge success. And there was a lot of hype for this match, rightfully so. It's always terrific when Swiatek and Sabalenka meet up against each other. Just the combination of their power and pace on both sides, and just like how much of a tactical match it ends up being, but their strengths and weaknesses. I thought like going in, I was expecting a good quality match, but nothing like the year before, and it actually surpassed that by a lot.
Hmm.
It was just, and that's so great. Like when a match like actually delivers and it over exceeds the hype, which is what we had here. Because, like you said, I mean, it just came down to the absolute wire. Like, there was very, very little separating both of these two, and coming out on top, like those three match point saves. I mean, I really don't think Sabalenka should have a ton of regrets on those specific points in particular, because I thought Iga was just extremely, incredibly clutch and brave on especially two of those, where she was just like she just took it out of Sabalenka's hands. And like, I mean, there was just so much to unpack in terms of what it means for both of them, but also just the fact that you can have a high quality match like this that brings a lot of attention to the sport,
Hmm.
on the WTA side, and you finally have like a great group of like three players that are just consistently right now like ahead of everyone else, and so that makes it super exciting. And hopefully we get more of these matches. Hopefully we get it again in Roland Garros. Maybe Rome might be tough, but hopefully like later on in the year as well. Like it was uh it was a really good showcase for the WTA, because it wasn't just the final, right? I mean, we also had, Sabalenka Rybakina meeting in the semis, and that was a third set tiebreak that really could have gone either way. Rybakina actually served for the match for a straight set win, and then Sabalenka Collins as well earlier in the week, which was also another amazing battle. And so, yeah, I mean, it was just the women really sort of carried the showcase for Madrid, especially the second week.
Hmm.
And yeah, I was happy to see it, especially because I mean that final was one where I saw a lot of people writing Substacks and analysis pieces on it, and going into in-depth things about their return position and their forehand quality, and like just there was a lot of people I think who are normally more ATP people, and I
Mm.
saw them really just go dig into this match in a super analytical way, like they do a lot of the men's matches. So I was really happy to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting how Madrid, for the second year running, I'm not sure if it's the second year running, but we had the controversy before with the women's final last year. I think the doubles final, or the players couldn't even the women's couldn't even do like a final like a speech, a trophy speech or something. And
Yeah,
then now this year we had like a double, like a like a double whammy in the sense that like Sabalenka came up with that like very unfortunate quote, which
yeah,
I mean maybe some parts of it like you can excuse in the sense like maybe second language, or maybe she was also meaning to say in the sense that she kind of just doesn't watch WTA because she kind of plays with all those players anyways, and in a sense just kind of feels like a job. But it doesn't take off of the fact that she did say that the men's tennis is more interesting, which was is a bit of
yeah.
a sad way to come out of this and come into the final, to the women's final, and play a fantastic match that was like clearly the best match of the week by far. Maybe top five best matches of the week probably were women's, if not at least top three. And then just coming out of just the very fact that like there were some other things that Philly Lopez did an interview as well. We say like, oh, we don't do anything against the women and things like that, but a few things just kind of fell off for a couple of years now, at least like in the Madrid tournament regarding the WTA, and this is just interesting because at that point it's just we didn't even need to like write stats or go super deep about anything WTA ATP. The tournaments and the matches just spoke for themselves. Like, as in, unfortunately, we're gonna get this into that a little bit later. A lot of men just ended up retiring or withdrawing due to injury. Seems to be like a lot of hurt people right now. So that was extremely unfortunate, even for just for the individuals. But it just kind of went to show that like the women just carried the tournament and like he was, like it was nothing. It could have been as well just a WTA tournament. It would have been just as good. I wouldn't necessarily have missed any of the women's action, to be fair.
Yeah, I think like, in a combined event like Madrid, I mean, it is one of the few tournaments that has equal prize money for both of them.
Mm,
But this is really something like this was the owner of this tournament, Ian Tiriac, has like tried to sue the WTA in the past for like, for having equal prize money, and he was sort of against it. And this tournament, I think going back, has like a history of always like treating the women like quite secondary. If we
mm,
saw everything that happened last year with the trophy speeches and then like the cake size, but like I guess the cake size was symbolic of like the overall, sort of imbalance there.
mm,
But and then yeah, you had the Sabalenka quote, which is kind of unfortunate. She sort of wrote it back by saying, it's about really like me doing this as a job, and so like I'd rather watch men's matches just for fun, that kind of thing. And she mentioned like
mm,
how the men have, better like it's better for like strategy and stuff like that. I thought it was a little unfortunate. I think she kind of regretted it a bit later,
mm.
but um but yeah, like I just it was it's one of those cases where like it's not even about like what tour is superior or whatever it is. Like tennis is tennis, right? Like in the sense,
Yeah,
like some days men's matches will just be better. Some days women's matches will just be better, and it just
yeah,
it just works like that. Like,
yeah,
these are like pretty quality players on both tours, and sometimes it's just it is what it is. Like, and this time it was the WTA that really delivered, like
yeah,
for the whole fortnight basically. So
yeah.
yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, and you mentioned the cake thing, and I when I was talking about the trophy speech for the doubles, I thought it was like that was a cake something. That was a sort of like a cake gate, and I couldn't remember exactly what it was, but you're totally right. There was a somebody, was it Sabalenka that received the birthday cake,
Yeah,
and then
she received
Alcaraz
like
received
a,
like a
a small cake.
massive birthday cake or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then the tournament director was like, "Well, we did the same for Holger Rune," and he had like, and he just kind of got into it on Twitter, and it was just like something
yeah,
that like some fan noticed, and like sort of brought it up. But then,
yeah,
but then there was like a pattern of like the girls wearing, these like revealing outfits for like the ball girls, and then you
Yeah.
had I think the trophy ceremony thing was like by far the worst because
It was
like
definitely.
that
That was
was
just very
like I don't
distasteful.
know what they were thinking by doing that because
Yeah.
that just baffles my mind to this day. Like it just can't be
Yeah.
justified that you don't let them speak, the
Yeah.
runner up or like I've never seen anything like that before. So
Yeah.
that was just like a total new low. Like
Yeah, it was shocking, honestly. Yeah. But back to the match. I mean, if you want to, we can chat about like other matches first, but like let's just get into, I guess, the final. I think is the most important part of the week. Um, what's your take on this? Like, I have a few things that I kind of felt like I was trying to notice. I was like really watching this match. I guess like kind of the benefit of hindsight. Like I was trying to watch this match, trying to like really see like where Swiatek went well and where Sabalenka kind of had her misses, and I was just like trying to analyze some of it already with the knowledge of the score and the result in mind. But what do you think of it? Like, what were your takeaways, like statistically or strategically, tactically? Yeah,
yeah, I mean, you know, right away in the first set, I sort of noticed that okay, Swiatek is playing a bit more patient and playing a high margin because usually in the past, like against some of these bigger hitters, I've seen Swiatek kind of like when she's rushed, especially on her forehand side, she's trying to sort of fight the power with power and like go straight at them, and she kind of loses like her strengths and her identity as a player in that way because she's just trying to like take a super aggressive shot where she's rushed on the forehand and just trading blow for blow and kind of like not really relying on her amazing like defense and athleticism. And I noticed right away like she was a lot better at like hitting really safe down the middle and not giving Sabalenka too many angles and like straight line baseline power, and she was actually like mixing it up a bit more. I felt like there was less bashing from her because like particularly like against Ostapenko or Rybakina or Sabalenka, we've seen Swiatek like trying to do the same thing as her opponent and like kind of like that takes away her strengths. So I felt like she did a really good job of playing a lot more discipline from that sense. And also like the serve, I was very impressed with her, you know, not necessarily ability to get free points, but more like her location on the serves, the body serves that she was able to come up with, especially under pressure. The way she was able to mix in like that wide serve on the deuce side and like go T on the ad and like just get Sabalenka really confused on like she got a lot of unreturned serves. Like in the first set, I think like almost 41% of Iga's first serves didn't come back into play, which was really huge for her, particularly on the serve. And then like, you know, there were some patterns as well, like backhand to backhand. I felt like Sabalenka had the edge earlier on because she was just she's just able to generate this ridiculous amount of pace and depth. And like Swiatek is generally better at absorbing that on the backhand side, but like her backhand hadn't really clicked into gear in the first few games. There were a few too many like errors from her, but like once that started to work out, then I sort of felt like, okay, what because Sabalenka can hurt you from anywhere on the court, especially on a court like this, where the ball just sits up right in her strike zone, like shoulder height, and you just feel like she can hurt you on the forehand, on the backhand, on um on basically like any baseline rally because she's just gonna go for it no matter what. And so Swiatek, like to be able to move Sabalenka around, she really had to work the court. Like it used a lot of angles, get her off the court, like not necessarily go for power, but just like try to break that rhythm in a way, like, you know, get her on the move and make sure that she can her what really stood out is like her athleticism and her defense on the backhand corner, like the amount of times she was like just, you know, like fighting for space and like she was able to slide into that shot and just turn defense into offense like really nicely, and then get her big forehand into play and not necessarily hit winners, but just move Sabalenka around and coax errors out of it. That I thought was really big in the beginning, and
hmm
later on in the match. And then when she sort of had to fight for the supremacy back, like I feel like she was able to do it in a way that was much more controlled. Whereas in the past, you know, I've seen her just even like last year's final, you know, a lot more flustered by the hard hitting. So that's those are like
yeah.
some of the things that I noticed, but like, you know, the serve was huge,
Mm.
the more high margin play was huge.
Yeah, I agree. I think that in a sense, like what I've noticed in the beginning was how more attackable Swiatek's backhand was. I think that Sabalenka was going especially like down the line with the forehand, like I think was very effective. Even throughout the match, I think was pretty effective just because um in this match in particular, I just gotten the feeling, like, if you feel to disagree with me, but I just kind of am getting the feeling that overall Sabalenka's forehand is superior to Swiatek's. In general, I feel like it's just it's less easy to rush. I think she's more able to generate power. Or Swiatek, if we kind of get it rushed, it's more easier for it to sit up. But I think as the match progressed, the dynamic switched that from Sabalenka really needed to kind of force Swiatek to stay in the forehand corner and just kind of trade blows on the attack on the forehand. Because if Swiatek kind of like it was a constant struggle to like who's dominating. Like they were both like very close to the baseline all the time. Um, and I felt that Swiatek was trying to um at the beginning, like she was I it was very patient as well. I feel like you said it exactly right. I think she kind of like try to like find a happy medium between counter punching, defending, and like just really trying to like take the ball early and trying to like be on the offense first. But when she went on the defense, I felt like as the match progressed, she became more and more comfortable in being in that position and just changing and kind of trying to get more on the on just kind of like edging it out like at the end, like in the medium to long shot rallies. So if Sabalenka wasn't really kind of capitalizing on those, I felt like the chances were getting higher and higher that Swiatek would win the rally. Especially if from the backhand, I felt like backhand to backhand, Swiatek was better. Especially if she tried to like use the angles, I felt like Sabalenka was less able to um, get the backhand in play. I felt like there was quite a few errors or like less good shots from that angle. But um, yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like one of the most surprising things on this match was how Swiatek was able to, from basically anywhere on the court, be able to like retrieve balls and like get. There was a couple really good passing shots from the forehand side that Swiatek hit. And they were phenomenal, and I thought like it was just like really good from her to like being so like such an all court player in Saturday's match. But yeah, I feel like those are just my impressions. I think that it's overall, and obviously like the head-to-head kind of says it, and the ranking also. But overall, Swiatek it emerged as a better player. But Sabalenka's playing with her, with her strength, it was not that far behind, honestly. And like it was just definitely a couple points here and there. I feel like she kind of missed a few opportunities. Maybe it was a little less patient in the first couple match points that she's had. And then the tiebreaker is just like clutch Swiatek just kind of showed up and yeah, most stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like the backhand to backhand rallies, I was surprised in the beginning that they weren't favoring Iga a ton.
Mm,
But after that, when Iga found her timing, I felt like she was better able to open up the court with it and absorb pace better off of it. Because you're right about the forehand in the sense, like, because she has an extreme grip, and because like Sabalenka is able to hit the ball so heavy and hard at the same time with a ton of spin, it it makes it harder for Swiatek to defend off that side. So like when she has a mid-court forehand, then Swiatek is a lot more dangerous, and it's the most offensive weapon on slow clay when she has a ton of time. But the backhand is better for defense for Iga for sure.
hmm
The way she's able to just change directions and absorb pace, like the stroke is so much more compact, and yeah, like that was pretty huge for her with just the way she was able to change the complexion of those rallies with the backhand. And even on the serve, I felt like there were some cases of Sabalenka like not quite reading it, and then there were some cases of
Mm,
like Iga just coming up with a really good body serve under pressure, or like out of nowhere, like just catching Sabalenka a bit off guard, because Sabalenka has this really wide return position, like especially when she's on the ad side. And I felt like Iga was having a ton of success going down the tee, but on the big points, she would actually kind of go out wide and make sure like the she hit a good kick serve to get a good +1 off of it so that she could spread the court a bit better. And like that's why she wasn't actually getting broken as many times. They each got broken 5 times throughout the whole match.
mm,
But I felt like for the most part, like on serve, Iga felt a lot more secure than she would, like, for instance, against Rybakina on a really fast court, where you feel like Rybakina can really hurt her off the return directly. Whereas for Sabalenka, it's more like, you know, cumulative pressure. She actually has to do it in baseline rallies as opposed to just the return itself. So that's a different sort of complexion to the match, but it's quite big that Iga managed to win this in Sabalenka's preferred conditions, in altitude, in a tournament that she's won already twice. And, I felt like if over time, like, I think Iga is learning, like, it's a bit like Rafa winning in Madrid. Like, he's only won it 4 or 5 times. Whereas Iga, like, same thing, like, sort of sea level clay, where, it's not as much of a servers tournament. It's like more natural and like expect for her to win. But like now that she's actually won this, that's pretty huge.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that just separates her a little bit from
yeah.
the rest of the top three even
Yeah.
more.
Do you think that 'cause I was watching the match, especially like you mentioned, like how Swiatek kind of needed to explore a lot more angles and whatnot. Um, Sabalenka definitely felt like more, and we know that Swiatek is a great mover, but Sabalenka definitely felt like a lot less comfortable as soon as like, he kind of got out of off of her, striking zone.
Yeah.
It was you clearly see the ending of the rally on Swiatek on Swiatek's racket at that point. But do you think that Sabalenka lacks a little bit as a mover, or do you think she's good enough, or do you think she's above average, or is it just because Swiatek is so good that it just kind of felt like, especially I guess for me, my personal perception is that she wasn't exactly a great mover to on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, from a lot of positions, like she prefers like the first strike sort of tennis. She prefers like balls that are just right in her strike zone in her wheelhouse, and um, just goes all out, super heavy, hard hitting power. And then when you get her on the stretch, then you feel like, okay, you can open up a little bit more court. Um, because she's still getting to those shots, and when she gets a good strike on it, then she can be really dangerous. But she's not nearly as good as Swiatek on the move. Like Swiatek is just a whole different level of
Yeah.
clay court movement where she's just, and it's like really hard to move on in Madrid, I feel like, because it's a bit more slipperier, and like the center court plays different from the outside courts. I feel like it's the thin. That's one observation from Madrid. I felt like even the players that are normally better at moving on clay, like I don't think they were moving that well this week. That's why we saw a lot of like some injuries sometimes, like when they were trying to change directions, or like Fritz was saying the court is much more slippery around center court than it is on the outside courts, and they have less clay, and it plays, and it's you can really see like the hard court effect of it more so. So I thought that was like somewhat of a common theme, but like yeah, like Sabalenka for Iga, like the more times that she was able to use angles and open it up and more like short angles, that's when I felt like she could, get it out of anytime you get the ball out of Aryna's strike zone, like shoulder height, you're more likely to get either an attacking ball or an
Hmm.
error off of it. So that's usually the play. The problem is she just hits so damn hard on both sides that you just to get that
Yeah.
time back, you don't feel ever safe of taking advantage of her of Iga having superior movement because of just how lethal the
Yeah.
baseline play is.
That's true. Yeah. And after I've seen like right now, we obviously, as I said, like we're missing Rome, which is going to probably um give us a little bit more information in terms of like so the most similar conditions that we've had to that we have for Paris and the Roland Garros, the Grand Slam.
Yeah,
But now that we've had like Rybakina beating Swiatek and Stuttgart, reaching semi and winning the tournament, obviously, and then going on to reach semifinals in Madrid, losing out to Sabalenka and also like one of the matches of the week. And all this stuff like Swiatek did reach semifinals, lost to Rybakina in a great three-setter, winning now Madrid, and Sabalenka is kind of like being present like here and there as well. Expecting for Rome to at least like um hopefully nobody comes out injured. I think Swiatek had to withdraw last year or 2 years ago, I believe, against Rybakina. Um,
yeah. Last year she got it
last year,
injured. She
yeah,
had a bit of a like
yeah.
right leg injury
So
in
yeah,
the middle of the match. So I don't think she'll be wanting to take many risks. If something like that
mm,
happens, then she
yeah,
starts feeling a little bit, you know, dicey about like making the injury worse. She'll probably want to pull out just because like
yeah,
she's got all the matches she needs
true,
under her belt. Like probably more prep here, but honestly, with the days off and maybe with just the fact that she is gonna likely win her earlier rounds in a more
yeah,
comfortable way. Because the thing also about this is Sabalenka spent 60 games en route to the final and played a ton of three-set matches, which actually helped her a ton, like get into
yeah.
the
just getting
proper
like more
rhythm for this. So like
match
physically, this was
practice.
a really impressive feat for Sabalenka, even though she didn't end up winning and almost won. Like that's still super impressive that she played almost three times the amount of Swiatek just to get to the final, and she still had so much left in the tank physically.
To
That
almost
impressed me
win.
quite a bit. That like,
Yeah,
it ended up being a total non-factor as far as the match concerned. Like it was
yeah,
not decided on like who was physically more strong,
yeah, yeah. It
So
was
that was
entirely
that's
on
what
the
made this
tennis.
even more incredible that she was actually able to, you know,
Yeah,
it felt like both of them could keep going for another hour or two if they had to. Like it was just
yeah, like
crazy
a
the level of
like a five setter situation.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
definitely felt
athleticism
like
and
that.
movement.
Yeah,
It felt insane, like just
yeah,
from that physically, mentally. But and then they both kind of reference in their trophy ceremony that we have to do this all again in Rome. And so I think
yeah.
for Iga, it's probably not as big of a thing for Sabalenka though. I was looking at the rankings, and she and Coco Gauff are so close to each other that like if she happens to do a round better than Coco or something, then her number two seeding is safe for Roland Garros.
Hmm.
I was just thinking though, if she loses it early a bit in Rome and Coco does better than her, she'll be seeded third, and then she'll likely have to play Iga in the semi. There's a 50-50
Hmm.
chance, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that is potentially something, but then again,
So,
Sabalenka has done so well also getting to semis recently. Like that's been her
mhm,
her big thing in majors that she's made like six major semis in a row and she's managed to play her best tennis in the most important tournaments.
yeah,
So like that streak is we'll see if that keeps going. I think
yeah.
that's the main focus though, probably
Yeah,
more than
for
Rome.
sure. Yeah. Especially now, like I feel like they all, as you said, like I feel like they all, I guess now that Madrid is like a 2 week tournament, it's definitely feels like the players get enough tennis, enough court
Yeah.
time, and then just we
It
get to Rome and it's like, oh my gosh,
it's
there's still Rome to come. Yeah. But
I think it's like a coin because I mean it's like there's like two sides of the coin. Like you could say, okay, yeah, they have a day off in between matches for most of their matches, except like one day you do have to play back-to-back days. But then also mentally, I feel like it's so taxing because you're
yeah,
still in tournament mode and your days off are not really like your days off because you're still training, you're still doing physio, you're still eating, you're still like in that zone of like thinking about your next match, like basically doing your job, right? Like it's not like
yeah,
you can just go and not attend the tournament. Like you're still very much in that zone. And if it rains, you still have to play back-to-back days. And like, what if you have a really late match? Then
yeah,
your day off is like, yeah, you can forget about it. It's almost 24 hours at that point till your next match. So I think it's like so draining for the players to do this. 2 weeks Madrid, 2 weeks Rome, and then 2 weeks Roland Garros, like all in a whole stretch. So you kind of have to like, if you do really well in one, you might have to like just, not be too bothered if you lose early in the
yeah,
next or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
You kind of have
So
to like
yeah,
pace yourself, especially with the
yeah.
Olympics coming up
Oh
and
yeah, no, true.
the
Kind of have to
grass,
be.
like going
Yeah.
from clay to grass and then back to clay. That's a really tricky thing, especially if you're somebody like Iga who's like kind of expected to do really well at Roland Garros and the Olympics. It's like a very
Mm,
tricky balance.
yeah. So, with all things considered now, excluding Rome, as we are still going to see, who do you think are the favorites? Like, do you think that Swiatek, Sabalenka, and Rybakina have kind of like set themselves apart, and then we kind of have like golf as like a in her own level type of thing?
Yeah,
S-
kind of.
and or
I
do you
still
think that
think
they
those
kind of do
three are.
form like a big four, and the Roland Garros will be defined between golf is very much in the mix. Do you think do you think that that would be?
I mean, Goff has done well the last couple of years at Roland Garros. She's just lost to Iga last year in the quarters,
Yeah.
and 2 years ago in the final. It's just right now she's really struggling with her second serve. Like that's the only thing that I feel like kind of is holding her back. It's not even her forehand because I actually think her forehand is less of a weakness on clay, but it's just the second serve. She's hitting way too many double faults, and it's like almost it's a bigger problem than I've ever seen it. Like in the last 1 year, like against Keys, she was up 4-2 in the third set, and she kind of just hit like five or six double faults and like the next two service games, and then that was the match right there. It was, she was playing so well off the ground, but I just felt like the serve really
Hmm.
let her down. And I guess, if you look at the last 52 weeks, he's definitely like in the top three or four, but it's just like since the Australian Open semis against Sabalenka, like she's not been at that level of those other three. Those other three have been more consistent than her, especially
Hmm.
Rybakina and Swiatek. And Sabalenka this week kind of makes up for it as well. So, yeah, probably right now I'd put her behind those three just because of her last three wins. But like if she has a really good roam all of a sudden, you know, and depending on where she falls in, let's say she's seated second or third, I guess it doesn't really matter. She still has to get to the semis. But yeah, I mean, she could make the quarter semis or final in
Yeah.
Paris. But as far as this season goes, she's definitely like, below those three.
Yeah.
Like
And is Swiatek still overwhelmingly favorite to win the title again this year?
probably, I think like if I have to take I'd probably still like, I'd probably put her above the field even by a little bit still, just because of
Hmm.
those conditions at like Roland Garros where she's been so dominant and like just and the fact that now like she's won Madrid, which was supposed to be the one where the field was supposed to get the edge on her.
Hmm.
So I kind of think that she's still like the sizable favorite for me as
Yeah.
far as Roland Garros goes. And
Yeah.
it would be kind of surprising if she doesn't win it again.
Yeah. I would actually absolutely love it if Swiatek gets to win it again and just kind of like it wouldn't be a three-peat, but would it?
It
She's won
would,
2 years
yeah.
in a row. Yeah, three-peat. It'd be insane. I honestly like if I think I would kind of be very happy if like say for example Nadal is like retiring this year and now all of a sudden we kind of have like a phenom like happening in the WTA. Like Swiatek wins like 5 years in a row. I think that would be excellent. I think that would be amazing. So even if she wouldn't be a favorite now, I would definitely still on a personal level almost be cheering for her to do that just because I think it would be phenomenal. I think it would be incredible to see that happening in the WTA, something along those lines as well, and just kind of cementing her even more. Her place is like favorite, the dominant person on clay on earth right now. So that yeah,
Yeah, I mean, as far as these like big titles go, like she's really racking them up at a rate that's like putting her in the conversation of basically like everyone aside from like Chrissy and Martina and Steffi and Serena. Like
yeah,
she's really in that next tier right now where it's
yeah,
like she's only 22 and she doesn't turn
yeah,
23 until Roland Garros, and she's already won 9 WTA 1000s
yeah.
and 4 slams, and like she's won 20 titles, and then 19 of those are above the 500 level, or at least 500, and it's just like she's not doing it the easy way. Like
Mm-hmm.
well, actually the only person that kind of got close to her before the final was Haddad Maya, who came back from 4-1 down in the first
True.
set and just won 5 games, and like she's actually a very good player, like overall, especially on clay though,
Mm-hmm.
and like actually really pushed Iga last year at Roland Garros as
Yeah,
well, especially that second set. I remember the semi was super close. Probably gets overshadowed by the final to some extent
yeah.
with Mukhova, but that semi was really great too. So I still think like she'll have her set of maybe tougher opponents. Like it's not going to be like a 2020 situation where she just wins and like loses only like 30 to 35 games. I feel like there's still players that on her day, especially because it's best of three as well. Like she can drop a set, for instance, on the way to the final, or she can
Mm-hmm.
lose, especially fourth round onwards, when the competition really gets harder.
Yeah, yeah, for
Still
sure.
might have to go through both Sabalenka and Rybakina now. So
Mm.
it's probably not still gonna be easy. It's not like here, let's just hand her the trophy. I mean, she's still gonna have to like really fight for
Yeah,
it. It's
work
just
hard for it. Yeah,
she's probably just in a better position than the rest.
yeah, yeah. And I guess like moving on like to the men's side, that's
Yeah, just
obviously
one more
the
thing on those
yeah.
match
Go ahead.
points. I was very impressed by the all of them actually. Like the first one, she had this really good kick serve and then a backhand down the line that forced Sabalenka to like kind of push back and put a more defensive ball back into play. And she tried to reset the rally by going back down the line, but it was like more of a forced error than an unforced because Swiatek's backhand on the line was really good. And then on the next one, she hits this beautiful cross-court forehand winner and just moved Sabalenka side to side and just set it up really nicely, and not much Sabalenka could really do. And then on the final match point, she also forced another error on Sabalenka's serve. And actually, there's two Sabalenka really clutch points that stand out to me in this match as well. 4-all, 30-all, second serve ace. I couldn't believe it
Yeah,
in
yeah, that
that
was
moment,
crazy.
And then also when she saved the first match point at 6-7, she hit an ace down the tee. So now Iga really had to reset and like win the next 2 points after that. And I just like, uh, yeah, just crazy because this is, yeah, like this is not that much Sabalenka could do on any of those three, championship points that you guys saved.
Hmm.
There's just probably a few other things like return wise, maybe she'd have some regrets on in the tie break. She was up 4-3, felt like she could have won the next point and maybe extended her mini break lead. And she was also up 3-1 in the third, but honestly, it was so hard fought. Like no one deserved to lose this.
Yeah, yeah, he was. Especially like when a player comes down for match point, to win a
Yeah.
match, like you always feel for the others. They just kept getting so close like that. And it was Swiatek's first match point as well, right? Or was the second?
Yeah, just the first one was saved by an ace down the tee
Oh yeah,
from
true.
Sabalenka, but then the second one was the backhand that Aryna missed
Yeah, yeah,
on the championship point down the line, and she celebrated like more than any of her other four majors, and this was by far her sort of hardest fought final, win or lose,
yeah,
that she's ever had to go through. Whereas for her, she's not in this position a ton. Like Sabalenka and Rybakina are used to playing a lot more three setters and tighter
yeah.
matches.
But I
But
like it. I like that Swiatek has to go through those because
yeah,
honestly, he gives the whole like
it makes her
more
a lot more
aura to
sweeter,
her.
right?
Yeah, and it
When
just makes
going
more and more interesting to follow her as well. Like just kind of seeing like that she has to, go through hardships and players who are
yeah.
actually going to toe to toe with her. So that's really really nice to see. It was nice to see in the big three era. It was nice to see against Serena. It's nice to see against Swiatek as well.
Yeah, especially because the rule book on her last year was like, oh, she wins really easily or she loses really easily, and so she's
Yeah,
really like changing that narrative over the last 1 year. She's won a lot of tight matches,
yeah,
especially this year. So that's just another one kind of in her column. And yeah, I mean, Rybakina also had to go through it in the semis, 6-1, 5-4 serve for it. Missed a really easy forehand that
mm,
pretty much 95% of the time she'd make to get to match point, and you could just see it right then that all of a sudden now, yeah, the doors open for Sabalenka, and she took full advantage and then got it to a third, and
mm-hmm,
then Rybakina had a couple more break points at 5-all in the third, but then they had a really well played final stretch, and Sabalenka was just way too strong in the third set tiebreak. But uh, but yeah, I guess it's also kind of like you win some and you lose some because Rybakina also had
yeah,
was also two match points down against Putin and then hit this ridiculous forehand angle off of a drop shot in the quarters. So we were actually very close to like not having a Rybakina Sabalenka
yeah,
semi.
true. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. And I guess like moving over to the men's side, there's obviously the elephant in the room, the injuries, the problem with players retiring. We had Alcaraz playing like at something like 60%, 50% of his actual intensity. Like his forehand was very much not there in the normal times. Sinner was, as the tournament progressed, increasingly less likely to continue. Um, and
yeah,
we
oh
had
my
like
goodness.
the obvious Lehachka just kind of his back just kind of like seizing on him and his not being able to complete even the first set against Felix. And a
And
lot
then
of
also
these,
Medvedev.
yeah,
Medvedev in
Medvedev,
the
yeah,
round before that. His hip just totally went out on him. And he's like the only one that we just don't know. We don't
yeah,
have the full details on right now. Like Lehechka's out of Rome, Sinner's out of Rome, Alcaraz is out of Rome.
hmm
Alcaraz coming in, like he basically said, I'm not 100% already, like before the tournament started, and he had his
yeah,
arm like, wrapped up, and he basically said, I haven't been hitting forehands. I've just been practicing my backhand and my drop shot, my serve and everything else. But the forehand is like you could see he was playing it a lot softer, the usual acceleration
yeah,
miles per hour spin, like none of that was really there. And like down the stretch against Rublev, like Rublev played amazing. He served really well, especially the second and third set.
yeah,
And he stayed so calm and composed, and he did so many great things. Like he took his backhand down the line really well. He played, you know, he, whenever Alcaraz tried to come back at him, he was just super clinical with his plus ones, and he was rushing Alcaraz. But like, Alcaraz down the stretch, you could see he was clearly like hampered by a lot, and so
hmm
now he's gonna skip Rome, and that's tough because he also missed Barcelona and he missed Rio earlier the year with the ankle. He missed Monte Carlo, so that's rough. And then Sinner the hip problem. Like he's also out of Rome, which sucks for him because Rome is like the big tournament. Like for Alcaraz, it's Madrid. For Sinner, it's Rome, where they're playing in front of their home crowd. So that was a bummer, um,
hmm
for sure. Especially in Rome as well. That neither of those two are playing. Hopefully, they'll have enough time to recover for Roland Garros. Sinner says that if he's not 100%, he's not going to play Roland Garros. I'm assuming Alcaraz will have the same approach as well. And then
yeah.
Medvedev
He's
is the
got a
defending champion,
yeah,
and that was just so sudden. Like all of a sudden, he just couldn't move anymore, and he just totally locked up on him. And the Hechka, you could see, was clearly in tears.
yeah.
Um, just super. frustrating.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, do you think because Alcaraz has obviously like the defending champion points to and at Wimbledon. Do you think that's kind of like waiting more on him than trying to be healthy for Roland Garros?
Honestly, he would love to probably have a go at Roland Garros just for that reason itself, right? He has the Queens and Wimbledon points
True.
to defend, and also like this is like the part of the year that like you would expect like from Indian Wells, basically through Wimbledon, whereas like he can make his most number of points and like he did last year. But yeah, that's like not ideal at all. Like
Yeah.
there's two or three matches in Madrid, where he was so clearly like I just hope he didn't make it worse by playing Madrid. Because I know he basically wouldn't have played it unless, if it was Roland Garros or something, he wouldn't have played it. But because it was Madrid and because it's his home crowd and like he was a two-time defending champion, he tried to give it a go. But I kind of think, yeah, maybe 3 weeks might be enough. Maybe he can use the first two or three rounds of Roland Garros. Hopefully he gets a good draw and then he can work his
Yeah.
way into it. But it's not really ideal. But then again, I also thought Indian Wells title wasn't gonna happen after the ankle injury. So
Mm.
this guy is certainly capable of some really special stuff. And
Yeah.
maybe he can
Yeah.
find it in RG.
Yeah. Hopefully his 21 years of age are still coming with some like super healing properties of the young people. And yeah, hopefully he's going to be fully healthy for Roland Garros. And same for Sinner as well. It's going to be really a shame if the two
Yeah.
players of the moment don't really don't play in Roland Garros. And obviously nothing against Djokovic as well. Like we're saying two players of the moment just because they are essentially the future. So this is basically the
Yeah.
reason why. But Djokovic obviously defending champion and in Roland Garros. He's in the Rome draw, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And
Okay.
this is the first tournament he was playing since Monte Carlo because
Yeah.
he skipped Madrid in order to get himself ready
Yeah.
for this. And yeah, I mean we'll learn more about him where he's at this
Yeah.
week, because he actually had a better Monte Carlo than previous years.
Yeah.
But like I think this is where he's gonna want to
Yeah. And
clamp
I
down,
think that
because I also it's a really good chance for the other players that are not in that tier one, like your Casper and your Stefanos, and now Rublev is definitely in the discussion for sure. Um, Zverev also because of his past Roland Garros success, even though he hasn't really done well this clay season. But yeah,
mhm. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. And Djokovic is as you said, like it's kind of a bit of a question mark. He's still obviously the world number one by quite a few points. So his is still pretty dominant. It's just kind of has been 2024 has been a bit of I guess a
yeah, because he
disappointment for
doesn't
his
have
own
a title yet,
standards. Yeah,
and
yeah,
because like he is a year older, so you still, you're kind of not sure. I guess like Roland Garros is
yeah,
what will really sort of tell us, like, is he still like as big of a favorite in these majors as he once was, or
yeah,
is he like finally starting to decline at almost at 37 now?
yeah.
But like, yeah, mm,
Yeah, so I feel like Rome is a lot up in the air. Like there's a lot more to see in Rome, I guess, like in the ATP side. Like not necessarily in the ATP side just because of the reasons mentioned. But there's a lot of players to see, and obviously there's the Djokovic factor that we need to evaluate when Rome comes about. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, but yeah, I guess like going back to Madrid and seeing Felix in the final, obviously he got
mm,
probably one of the luckiest draw he could ever possibly have gotten in terms of the unluckiness of the other players. But made it to the final, won the first set, lost it 7-5, 7-5. What's your take on that one, on that match? How well
yeah,
Rublev played? You mentioned before that he had like some sickness that he was dealing with.
yeah. We found out going into the match that he has a bit of a cold.
Hmm.
And like he got off to a little bit of a slow start. I was very impressed by Felix in the first set because he was hitting his backhands really well, like much better than we're used to seeing. Because the backhand is like not a strength of his game, but he was hitting it really well in the first set and serving very well. Came out with like just the right game plan, aggressive intent. He was up 4-1 40 love. But crucially, like after that, you could see Rublev's baseline rhythm started to settle. He started to up his first serve percentage. a bit more. And crucially, the important part was that from 4-1 40 love, Rublev ended up coming back, getting one of the breaks back. And when Felix served for it, he had to save a break point for 5-all. So he was building all this momentum going into the second set. And you felt like even though Felix got that first set, the complexion is shifting a little bit. And then it started to be that Rublev upped his first serve percentage like crazy, 75%. He was at like 60 in the first set. And then Felix like felt like he couldn't win second serve points anymore because the backhand consistency went down a little bit. In some of the baseline rallies, Rublev was able to open up the court a bit better, rush Felix. So you felt like he was having to work less hard on his serve, but Felix was doing a great job clutching out service games. Like he was still like he was saving a lot of break points, getting out of jams, and then at 5-6, he just plays kind of one or two really like sort of nervy points where you could see like he was thinking about getting into a tie break and potentially like the first Masters title. Maybe it could be mine, that kind of thing. And then in the third set, Rublev only lost 3 points on his serve. So he was super dominant on the serve, whereas Felix was having to save break points every second service game. He saved 5 break points in three different service games, and then at 5-6. Oh, and he was also struggling with his leg a little bit. Like he was getting it rubbed
Mm.
on the change of ends, and maybe that was just nerves, or maybe just physically. This was his first Masters final, so he's like probably not. It was a very weird rhythm for him throughout the whole tournament to get
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
retirements and one walkover. Like that's basically like never happened to anybody like that I can remember in
Yeah.
recent times. I guess the closest comparison is like Rybakina in Rome last year, but even that was a little different because she didn't really have like a walkover. It was more just retirements where she played a bit more. But yeah, then at 5-6, two of the last 3 points double faults. Um, and then one really long rally in the middle. And maybe the double fault and championship point had to do with that, which he alluded to later,
Yeah.
recovering from the physical point before. So, but it was a strange week. I'm sure he can still take some positives away from it, given now he's going to be back in the top 20. And his draws will be a little bit better. At least he'll be seeded. He'll avoid some of the best players earlier on. And look, he still beat Casper Ruud, which is a really big win. Like Ruud has been killing it all year, and especially the beginning of the clay season. So he played really, really well in that match. So I mean, that kind of validates like if you beat Ruud, I guess, yeah. I mean, he deserved to be in the quarters anyway. The big one was the Sinner walkover,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I'm sure it was much needed because also the last 18 months he hasn't had the best health, right? He had the knee issues last year, which really sort of
Yeah.
hurt
Yeah.
his
For sure.
season. Like he's still way too good to be ranked wherever he was, like 35 in the world. There's no way Felix is
Yeah. He's at least top
deserves to be
15.
ranked there, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and also the serve, the altitude, also the final was indoors, so that also kind of helped him. All of his titles are indoors, and he becomes so much more dangerous without the outside elements,
Yeah.
and he can play more of that first strike, bang bang sort of tennis,
Yeah.
the serve and the forehand. When
Hmm.
his forehand, when in the middle of the court, when he's serving really well behind it, like it's very precise.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
no, a lot
Can
of
you?
it is Felix actually. It's not.
I think one of the things that was frustrating a little bit for me in terms of like watching Felix was how a lot of the time, especially in the first set, which was I watched the most of. I think I watched up until 5-all in the second, and I had to leave. But um he had a lot of 40-15 opportunities, and it just kind of like getting back to deuce and getting back to deuce. And it's kind of tough for me to kind of like pinpoint exactly where does it go wrong, but like I feel like I read once like this article on Tennis Abstract that was as soon as like when players are able to get the ball to a certain position on Felix or Felix feet and when they're returning, Felix has a very, very low percentage of like points won on that at that moment. And he's extremely heavily dependent on his first. And you mentioned like he was barely being able to like win on his second serve. And I think this is like a really, really big issue that he kind of needs to kind of to address.
Yeah,
But obviously, like being able to win matches was a big thing. I think kind of like upping confidence and just doing well with the tools that you have, with like the level that you can muster right now is good. But now that he's kind of like made this final however he happened, however many walkovers happen and like however many retirements happen, um, needs to reevaluate like how can you make sure that like this wouldn't wouldn't happen again. Like that, he can at least like hold off like his serves a little bit more easily and like get to at least the tiebreaker.
Yeah, that was a shame that we didn't get a third set tiebreak. I was really looking for that because I thought that would be the perfect conclusion to this. It's just like outside of those first serve points, I just felt like Rublev was by far the better player in the second and the third sets, and like Felix was just barely hanging on, whereas Rublev was just cruising on serve. And like, yeah, I definitely agree with what you said on the return, especially like that's not one of his strengths. Same also like from neutral. I feel like
Mm.
he's not as great as Rublev. Like, when they're just trading and Rublev is looking to be a bit more patient and then get the advantage in attack. Felix usually is the one who misses first. So that's kind of unideal. Um, and then yeah, the second serve as well is definitely one area where like either I feel like his mechanics are sometimes like he doesn't usually go for a kick serve. It's mostly a slice serve, and it's usually mostly very predictable in the center of the court. And it's usually under pressure. You'll get some double faults. And Rublev's is actually quite attackable as well. But the thing is, actually, in the last 1 year or so, I would say he's upped his miles per hour up a little bit to where like it's not that soft anymore. It's more like in the 90s, and he's moving a little bit better as well, so he can win more second serve points than he used to, compared to like let's say a year or two ago. I still think the best players in the world will definitely expose it, but a player like Felix, I don't think right now on return is able to quite do that. So that was a little bit frustrating for him that he couldn't make any progress after the first set on return whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah, but honestly, like in terms of Rublev, um, also was coming off of like some like a weird patch in his career
Yeah,
after
four
the
match losing streak.
disqualification. Yeah.
And I think that disqualification really hit him hard because
Yeah.
yeah, he really took that. I hope he took that as a really good, valuable lesson in his career, in terms of like changing his mental approach, like becoming a lot more like disciplined in how he behaves and like also just how he processes losses in terms of not being so hard on himself and all that. And that's why he was taking it out on others, right? Because he just sort of had that reckless side to him. Even though off the court he's like a lovely guy, everyone loves him, but like on the court those demons were still lurking. And so he lost four losses in a row. And he hadn't won a set in any of those losses. Brandon Nakashima beat him in Barcelona, in straight sets. And so you could see he was really like not in a good headspace whatsoever. But then he comes into Madrid and he's playing great. And he just sort of he finds his rhythm again. And then he served so well throughout the whole tournament, like much better than I've ever seen him serve. That was quite big. And also just the fact that he was sick and he was dealing with he said he was also dealing with some like numbness in his foot or something. So he had to take like injections for those because he couldn't put on his socks and shoes. And he was having to eat baby food at one point in the tournament
Mm.
because he was so sick that he couldn't swallow anything. So it was kind of like he had no energy to waste whatsoever. And like he was able to play so well on the court because he was just on medications and he was just the adrenaline just sort of took over and he didn't feel anything while he was on court. But I don't know, going into Rome, that's a bit rough. I wouldn't be surprised if he either like hits a wall physically or has to pull out at some point. But in that sense, I think it's still the biggest title of his career, uh, by some distance, because he still beat Alcaraz. He still played a really good match against Fritz, where he was just
That's true.
proved like that he's the better looking court player for sure. And then Fritz is a tough matchup for him. Fritz had the 5-3 head to head going in, and I think Fritz
Especially
really
on
likes
course
playing
like
Andre.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, especially with how big Fritz serves. That was impressive that he won that 4-3, and then obviously in the composure aspect, there were many times in the final that he could have lost it, right? Like he could have just gone off the boil and just completely like either exploded or just lost that edge. And we actually kept it together pretty nicely. So that's not usually the case with Rublev. At some point, you're going to get some lapses, but I hope it wasn't just a one-off because he was not feeling well. I hope there was actually like a trend. He did write on the camera something that alleviated to like something attributed to like meditation. So
Mm.
that's great that if he's been actually doing that as I think it's kind of a combination of both that he took that Dubai default at heart and he's working to try to improve it, and also the fact that he couldn't waste any energy because he was like not feeling well.
Yeah.
I just don't know how much percent to give to each. Only he knows.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that Do you think that he'd be able to finally break his quarterfinal curse in
I think
Roland
it's
Garros?
possible. I actually think
Yeah.
I think it actually might be possible this time, especially if you don't get the best versions of Sinner or Alcaraz,
Hmm.
and if I don't know, depending on how Djokovic looks, but if let's say he has a winnable quarterfinal, maybe this is the first time he can actually get to a semi because the top seeds right now they're not looking as strong as in previous years. So this might be his best chance, honestly, to break that quarterfinal duck. He was pretty
Yeah.
close against Cilic 2 years ago, and then Cilic just played like an amazing fifth set tiebreak and peaked out of his
Mm.
mind, and Rublev like wasn't really up to the task. But like I don't know, like I think he might be able to. What do you think? You think it's possible with a good draw?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I was feeling a little less what do you call this? I was feeling less secure about this feeling just because like well Tsitsipas and Rude just kind of stepped up in Monte Carlo and Barcelona, but
Mm.
after obviously like Felix beat Rude, so and Rublev beating Felix kind of puts a little bit of a question mark. Well, maybe they're about the same level or something, but of course like we're also looking at different types of conditions and whatnot. But Tsitsipas also losing in the first in his opening round against Thiago Monteiro in two straight sets, 6-4, 6-4, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
that was
a
obviously
bit of an anomaly.
Montero. Yeah, a bit of an anomaly because Montero served like out of his head and
Yeah,
only missed like served at 91% of the whole match, which I just could not believe. Like, whoa,
yeah,
how are you not higher ranked than
yeah.
this?
I can't really
And
argue
also
about
just
that.
yeah, and then also just like the lefty super aggressive, like the fact that you can take advantage of Tsitsipas getting rushed in these fast conditions. I think this week actually Tsitsipas is playing Struff. That'll tell me a lot because Struff is a really tough matchup on clay.
Yeah,
And he's given Tsitsipas a lot of problems.
yeah.
He even beat him in Madrid last year and also Barcelona, which is slow clay, so that matters more. So
Hmm.
I'm curious if Steph can get past Struff. I think he's also going to want a deep run in Rome. I was thinking this that maybe Rome is not that important after Barcelona and Monte Carlo, but I feel like actually now it kind of is because if he drops out of the top eight, then he might have to play an Alcaraz or Djokovic in the fourth round, and I wouldn't pick him to win that match even at Roland Garros.
Yeah, yeah,
So like he'd want to avoid them just because he made the semis last year, so he's having to defend those points.
mm,
Um, and also like I think if he gets past Struff, there's a good opportunity that maybe he can make another deep run in
yeah.
Rome.
But yeah, it's interesting how the narratives have shifting in the sense that like obviously like we have like the Alcaraz Sinner and Djokovic, and even to a certain extent Medvedev, I guess, like even though his clay court performances aren't necessarily the best out of
Would you
the
still pick?
others.
Would you pick? You'd probably still pick Ruud and Tsitsipas, and maybe even Zverev to like take more advantage of this opening, right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
in
And
terms
and
of like
and that's
this
and now you're
final or
kind of
winning
like
the title,
inserting, yeah,
but
yeah,
in terms of getting that past that quarterfinal duck, which is the question you asked,
yeah,
it could be possible for Rublev. I think
yeah,
he might
exactly.
might be
But
able
yeah,
to.
you kind of like trying to insert like is Rublev trying to like put in is Rublev really finally getting into that category now of like
Yeah.
the Rude and Tsitsipas. And it's interesting because Rude is that very interesting player right now specifically because three-time Grand Slam finalist, two-time Roland Garros finalist, obviously losing to Nadal and Djokovic and Alcaraz is you kind of expect that in a sense, even though the first time was at the US Open, so everything was a little bit up in the air in a sense. But in hindsight, it does make sense. But he's just won his biggest title of his career, and that was in Barcelona. And Rublev has two Masters 1000s, even though he
Yeah.
kind of looked out a little bit in the sense. But um, you know, you could say like Rublev is basically in that second tier of players, in that second category, I would
I
say.
think definitely like resume wise for sure. Like
Yeah,
outside of the slams, he's done so much in terms of like wins over top players, and then also the two Masters titles and bunch of 500s as well. Like he has 16 titles, which is a lot. Like it's
yeah,
he's been in that 5 through 8 region for like the last 4 years. It's just can he finally become top four and can he finally make a major semi
yeah.
after 10 quarterfinals? I feel like he's always like reliable to get there, and then it just a question of who his opponent is. Like if it, I guess his best chances were Cilic and Tiafo, right? But
Yeah.
then I don't know if you're really gonna get easier opponents in Slam quarterfinals. Like you usually end up gonna get you know
Yeah, as long as the tough guys.
Djokovic
Yeah.
or
But
I guess
would
Sinners
you?
who beat him. Sinner beat him in the Australian Open quarters, right? So
Yeah, pretty handily even. Yeah.
I guess all he can do is just control and play his best tennis, and then see how close he can get in
Hmm.
those matches. As long as he plays better, then maybe he can take advantage if one of them is a little off. Like
Yeah.
if Alcaraz is still like not 100% with his arm or something like that. Like he's definitely capable of winning a match like that, which I wouldn't say like most players are still.
Yeah. Which, case in point, Alcaraz did win a few matches before he got to Rublev, and he was a three setter, so
Yeah.
still a tough player to beat. But would you pick so for example, you have like suppose that Tsitsipas and Ruud are the players that Rublev would have to face, or even like Zverev and Medvedev in the quarterfinals.
Actually,
Would
he
you
wouldn't have
pick?
to play them though. Like he wouldn't be able to, right? Because
Yeah.
they have to play. Oh, you mean like if like later on, like not
Yeah,
necessarily the quarters.
I guess like if you would have to play one of these guys on the clay on Roland Garros, I guess it's put it that like don't necessarily need to be like
Okay.
exactly at the
Yeah.
quarterfinals. But would you pick Rublev to win, or is he clearly underneath these guys still? Like, would you clearly still pick Tsitsipas to win, for example,
You know, they
or
played once in
Medvedev?
2020 in Roland Garros, and Tsitsipas
Mm,
won that one. Um, in straights. That's like the only data I really have. But like, yeah, he's more likely to beat a Ruud and a Tsitsipas than a Djokovic or Alcaraz or a Sinner.
mm,
So I definitely think he's more likely like against Tsitsipas. He's had some pretty even matches. He's won some in the past. Well, maybe it's possible.
yeah.
Zverev is a tough matchup for him generally, kind of like Medvedev, because he just absorbs all the pace and defends really well. And then I'd probably still pick Ruud over him. I think I just have a lot more faith in Ruud in terms of his ability to win those types of matches in quarters and
Mm,
semis. More so, like he's just gotten to so many big finals now that I kind of still think Ruud is like maybe the next best bet after those top three to like take advantage and do it again
mm.
because he's like done it twice in a row and like everyone always sleeps on him and
Yeah, true.
he's won his biggest title now and
And he beat
yeah,
Zverev last year, right, in the
yeah,
semifinals.
very comfortably. I was like, yeah, really impressed. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, I think he'd still be my pick. I think I'd still probably pick Ruud. It's pretty close between Ruud and Tsitsipas, but like I want to see what they both do this week. It's unfortunate that Ruud is in the same quarter as Djokovic.
Mm.
I'd like to see a rematch of that again and see see what happens if they play each other again. Chances are probably Djokovic is not going to want to lose twice in a row. He doesn't normally lose twice in a row to someone
Yeah.
outside of Nadal or Federer. So
Yeah. Oh,
um,
speaking of Nadal, like, what do you
yeah,
make of him now?
I think he looked better in Madrid. You know, he got to the round of 16. He got the win over De Minaur. He was serving a bit better. I think he was moving definitely a step above. Not anything close to like old Nadal for sure, but he was still sometimes vulnerable if he was in his backhand corner having to defend, or physically he was having some more dips like the Kachin match, which he ended up having to go three there and then having to play the next day against Lehechka. But I must say Lehechka played outstanding under the circumstances. He served out of his mind. He served like average 138 miles per hour on his first serve, which I couldn't believe. And then just like the every time he had a short ball, like he was just so offensive with it, and he was so good at net. And I think Nadal was competitive enough to where in another year where he wasn't feeling all these injuries, we would have said, oh, okay, like Madrid, he lost to a big hitter, big server, and he'll probably go into Rome and be the favorite again. It's not quite like that this time around, but I think we saw a clear step up, and then like now he's finally able to play 3 weeks in a row. He's playing at a decent enough level that he can be like competitive the last time he's playing these tournaments. So yeah, I think he can build on it and maybe even go a step further, like get to the quarters or something in Rome, and then
Mm.
yeah, and then just like stay healthy. I don't have him in my top three favorites to win Roland Garros or something, but like I don't know, like I still have so much respect for what Rafa can do at Roland Garros, even if he's like 70% or something, like he's just a
Yeah.
whole different animal when he steps on
Yeah.
that court. Just something about it that's just
Yeah.
making me feel like I can't quite count him out, like, you know.
If you're being like as realistic as you possibly can about Rafa and Roland Garros, where do you think
Yeah.
he will go to? And of course, like there's all the iterations about like draws. He could for all things considered, he could actually pick a top player to play in the first round being a wild card
Yeah,
as he
that's the
will
total
be.
wild card. Like he's never been in
Yeah,
that position where like all of a sudden he could be playing Alcaraz in the first round. Like that
yeah,
is actually possible. Same with Djokovic and like,
yeah.
but like
So
honestly,
yeah, if
I think quarterfinal.
draws are
I
kind
think I
quarterfinals,
think
yeah,
quarterfinal is what I would say.
yeah. It's
I
like
think
as far as you could possibly say, like yeah, I think yeah, I can definitely
I
see
think
that.
so.
Like yeah,
Like we saw Roger get to the. I know it's not the same thing. Like completely different surface, different injury, different phase, and
mm,
all that. But like we saw Roger get to the quarters of Wimbledon on kind of one knee
yeah,
and like winning a match against Nori and like I don't know. I guess you could say Nori and Diminor are kind of similar in that way. So like I could like if he's remotely healthy, you know, he's still like kind of a top 10 guy on the in my if I were to do rankings for Roland Garros, like I can't not put him in the top 10 just based on
hmm
everything he's done. So
yeah, that makes sense. I'm excited to see like how he does in Rome as well. Hopefully he doesn't have to withdraw due to an injury or just, and if he does so, like hopefully it's just precautionary just to be able to be fit enough to play Roland Garros. But you know, best case scenario is he just plays, and if he has to lose, he loses. Which he probably will, honestly, for being honest. If he will lose, that he would lose like again as at
yeah,
Lehechka
you know
did
there's going to
in
be a
his match.
ceremony on court,
Oh
and
yeah,
like you
1000%.
said,
Yeah.
yeah, like you know you saw like Lehechka was just they did that whole ceremony where they had the banners and they had his like four titles in Madrid, and then he had to basically like Lehechka was staying for the whole thing, and then he had like the King of Spain was out there. It was like a really big.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
was kind of like I'm assuming they'll have something like that for Roland Garros as well.
Yeah, 100%. They have a statue.
Uh, Especially because they have the statue of the guy, yeah,
Yeah.
and probably in Rome as well because he's won it like 10 times. So
hmm
yeah, I think we're pretty sure he's not gonna play Madrid again next year. And
Yeah, after all that, unless he
same
just
with
kind of,
Rome.
yeah,
So
unless like a big,
it's kind of
yeah,
cool that he's getting a chance to have a really good sort of like
farewell
actually say
tour in a
goodbye
way.
in a
Yeah.
proper way and like do it on the court as opposed to like in a press conference. I think that's the cool
Oh
part
yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, in some ways Federer didn't have that experience. Like it was just one big celebration at the Laver Cup, but he never like had a farewell tour.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's
Federer
special.
was mostly like he never really had a press conference to say much. He just kind of after he lost Wimbledon, he just kind of said like, "Hey, I'm gonna retire in the Laver Cup." So that's it. Like he just completely different style of doing
Yeah,
things.
but
I feel like that's gonna be
yeah,
a little bit of like what Murray does as well at the end.
but it's cool that yeah, you get to you're not leaving in a way that's like you know, he's not gonna lose 1-1 and be embarrassed by somebody. It's that
Yeah.
he's just supposed to clean up. He's gonna like it's gonna be a competitive match against a player that you would expect like at this stage in their career would beat him like a Lehechka. So yeah, I think it's like probably the perfect time, honestly,
Yeah,
to
for sure.
leave on a good note. So that's that's crazy. Like if you had told me that Nadal would still be playing at almost 38, because I was part of that group. I must like I'll hold my hand up and say I was definitely part of that group that was like, I don't think he's gonna be able to play past 30. Like I definitely thought that at the time, like
Yeah.
in the early 2010s, because I just didn't see how it would be possible for him to
To hold
last
the level. Yeah, yeah.
to hold. And now he's like basically playing guys double his age and like, you know, he played Darwin Blanche. He was like by the time he played
18, 17 years old
yeah,
still.
by the time Blanche was born, like Nadal already had won 3 French Opens. It's wild. Like,
And that was a crazy match too, because like that kind of really goes to show like the level then that I guess the ATP is that
yeah,
Nadal is still like a better player than most, even like in the even in the ATP, I would say. Like he if he went on to play like an ITF tournament, he probably win like most of his matches 6-1, 6-0 as well. So that's kind of I feel like that would be
yeah,
that's a I think that's kind of like goes to show like hey just the respect is there like for a reason. He's still a player that could take you out if you're not
yeah. I
paying
mean, he's
attention.
playing the tournament. He's not just playing it for playing it, right? Like
Yeah.
there's some hope that like the body holds up, that he'll recover, that he'll just get better as the tournament gets along.
Mm.
But the question is just yeah, like those back-to-back days and like recovering from a tough match. And like there's always like that risk that like oh no something will get go wrong and he'll get hurt again and then he won't have this. So in some ways, he's like playing it safe, but at the same time, like ramping it up as he's getting to Roland Garros. And
Hmm.
so he's like that scary, dangerous underdog. And at the same time, he's free because he knows this is kind of like Daniel Collins. Like this is my last, you know, big push. So he can sort of leave it on the line. I'm pretty sure he'll leave it all on the line and like be willing to die for it at RG
Yeah,
if
for
he's
sure.
in good
I mean, he
shape.
did it. He did it 2 years ago with like the
Yeah,
injections in the foot and everything, right? So it
right.
wouldn't be surprising if he really did try everything to be as fit as possible to win every match against anybody, really. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess on that note, we just covered it all. Madrid, Rome's up next. I don't think we're gonna do a drop review, but we'll see whatever we do about well, I guess drop review like it just started. We're on second day of the tournament already, but
Yeah. I
yeah,
guess
we'll see what
there isn't
happens.
really much in terms of like previewing it quarter by quarter, but I could just say, Djokovic and Ruud are in the same quarter, and Nadal is playing Zizou Bergs. He could play Hubert Hurkacz next, and that's all. Yeah. Then after that, let's see. Like, this is an interesting. It will be interesting to see how it develops from that standpoint. I mean, Sabalenka, Rybakina in one half, Goff and Iga in the other top half. But yeah, that's kind of all.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see what happens, and probably be back in about 2 weeks to review the tournament in Rome, and hopefully we get to get together to do a bit of a preview of Roland Garros draw as well when it comes out, because this one was obviously the biggest one, right? So that's the one that we're waiting for. So
Mm.
yeah, all right. Thanks so much for being here. You can follow us on at Tennis and Bagels on Twitter. You can listen to it obviously on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever is your preferred podcast that you want to listen to. Can follow Vansh at VanshB2K. Owen is at Tennis Nation. I'm at Rolandberg Andre. And yeah, see you guys next time. See ya.